It was in the rain, his fear washed away, while hope and ambition seemed to flow. The tears of rage were wiped from his face, and destiny set on its course. In the face of such loss, it's easy to see why faith is now in short supply. The damning effect of a life we once led return to the peace now of rest. Now grace of grace, purpose redefines the tragedy. Heart beating slow and thoughts now a blur. The opposite's easy to feel. Splintering focus so quick to pervade. Consciousness sharp razor blade. In the face of such loss, it's easy to see why faith is now short supply. The damning effect of a life we once led return to the peace now of rest. Be quiet, be still, be quiet, be still. The storm will pass. Peace to the land. Be quiet, be still, be quiet, be still. The storm will pass. Peace to the land. It was in.
I don't really have a name. If we called the people in my chat room the Silence, that would kind of be a cool Doctor Who reference, but you never know. I'm just making sure that my mic is working here since I was having issues with it yesterday. What is up, friends? I just want to take a few minutes today to go through some final touches that I've made to the mix. You know, yesterday I was in a pretty good place, and then, you know, started doing my listening tests, and it's a pretty common thing that happens. You know, in general, the balance of the mix and the bass and you know, the overall volume was pretty good when I was listening to it in my car, you know, and on my phone, which is, you know, kind of one of the listening environment tests I do. I normally try to listen in my car, which doesn't have a super great sound system, and then I listen to it through crappy earbuds on my phone, and then I just listen to it straight up on my phone and compare it to my reference. So yesterday I had mentioned that the reference for this track I was using was The Flame Is Gone by the Deer Hunter. So if you haven't listened to that, it's such a good song. Basically everything by the Deer Hunter is good. Basically the Deer Hunter and the Family Crest are the reason that I've been so heavy back into music again over the past year. Even though I've had a lot of the gear for a long time, and I invested in it when I was much busier in my business, I just hadn't been as focused on it, even though it's been a huge passion of mine my whole life, which is part of why I started doing the stream and all this good stuff again as well. But I just wanted to touch on, since I try to show off as much of the process as I can on stream. It's tough to show the listening tests unless I'm like walking around and going like, here's my cell phone, listen to it through Bluetooth on my car radio. And most of what I found is kind of typical. In fact, since the theme for Song a Week this week was reverb, my experience with reverb tends to always work out the same. I think that, obviously you can see my room is not really treated, which is something that I definitely need to fix in the future, or it's just something that I have to live with and then balance the mix in my other listening tests. But the kind of common thing for me with reverb, especially being, a newer producer, is, I generally start with way too much, and then I hear how washy it makes pieces of the mix. I found that my monitors, which are a pair of JBL 305s, the reverb will sound great in the room, which may again be a product of the room or whatever else, but the reverb will sound great in the room, and then you hear it on crappier speakers or things that aren't attuned to it. And of course, reverb can wash away a lot of the dynamics of a mix, or it can just be too much. And so I tend to do this with almost every track, start with some reverb and then scale it dramatically back and or just delete tons of it, which is basically what I ended up doing. The other thing that I ended up doing on this track that was pretty important was I had some kind of non-standard reverb on my vocals here. I was trying to get away with using this metallic effect that was going on here, and it just wasn't working. Like, no matter what I tried, it just wasn't working, and it was creating this kind of ear-piercing noise when you were listening to it loud. And so what I ended up doing is the two forms of reverb that I was using that were more designed around creating atmosphere and presence, I used them. As you can see, they went way down. I think these were probably, the last time I was on stream, they were probably at, -6, maybe even -8. So I took them both down by more than half, or close to half, more than half, to fix them, so that it wasn't so washy. The other thing is that I needed to work more with automation, which I was going to show off. So, let's talk about, while I'm focused on reverb, before I get into that. There was a presence reverb on the mix that was just, again, washing everything out, so I took it away. So I was pretty happy with where the mix was, so I just left my specific reverbs on the guitar and on the drums and just tweaked those, and then obviously there's plenty of reverb on the vocals. But it was just, again, the playground of when I'm composing and when I'm working on writing the song versus, all right, now we're actually mixing this and it sounds like trash. That's always a big thing that happens. And, again, it's fun to experiment. You always want to experiment. And then obviously when it comes down to the mixing phase, it's about being and mastering, which in my case I do what I would call de facto mastering. It's always better to work with someone else, whether it's a producer or whether it's using a mastering service, not an automated one, but using a mastering service, because you're doing that more for perspective. But for me, I'm doing it primarily for like a final EQ and compression and to get the volume comparable to other commercial tracks. And as I said, when I was surprised actually at looking at how loud the average volume was on that Deer Hunter track, which was as high as -6 LUFS, which that is pretty nuts. And most tracks I've found tend to be around the 8 to 10 range in LUFS, and obviously the streaming services are going to cut any of that down. They're going to cut it down to -14 LUFS no matter what you do. Well, each streaming service is a little bit different. There's a great resource for that, actually. which is called loudnesspenalty.com, which gives you an idea of what your track is going to sound like when it's reduced. But this track is really dynamic, as you heard during writing it, in that, you know, it has that quiet part in the beginning, which is more like a church choir, and then it moves into a more electronic part, you know, with just a basic expressive violin in there, and then it really explodes. And so where most of the automation came in handy was really in the louder part, which is my markers 7 through 10 here. First and foremost, I didn't like in the original mixes of the song how this part punched in. I wanted it to have big power coming in. Like, it's kind of a subdued punch in, like it's not exploding or, you know, coming into that big part, you know, but it is a growth process going through that minute and a half of this part of the song. So one of the places I added big automation was on our guitars, both our solo guitar and our rhythm guitar here, which, you know, again, it's more subtle changes, but it's going up to -10, and then it's kind of stair-stepping around, because during this part there's no vocals. When the vocals come in, I bring it way down so that the vocals are clearer, you know, and then I also added some automation to the vocals here, where the vocals needed to be a little bit louder, you know, especially at the end. So I took those up about 2, you know, and I could probably have stood to go up another dB or so, you know, if I wanted it to be washed over. But you've already heard those lyrics earlier in the song, so I chose to blend it a little bit more. But you'll hear that I really wanted this to come in hard. Enough for that to punch a lot more coming into the track. And then increase here, it goes down about, you know, 2 dB or so here, but it's because coming in at this part, I still want it to be heavy and I still want it to come in hard, but I bring the strings in. There's 2 falsetto lead parts going on. This is where the track gets a lot busier, and I did want to highlight some of those other elements. Lead guitar and the strings come in. The lead guitar and the strings are basically following the same part. I'm calling it guitar solo. I probably should have just called it lead. It's not really a solo. I was just going for a dirty, kind of vibrato effect there. You know, it's not meant to be perfect. It's just meant to create this kind of haunting effect. And it goes really well with the strings. Sense of space to add to the reverb, and I'm doing the same thing on the guitar verb presence that's in here, so that's really key as well to making this mix feel as big as it is. I actually really love this piano part. So I want it to feel like it's kind of phasing in and out of what's happening with the rest of the track here. hated it and just kind of went with where it was going. But I did bring the volume up a bit on the drums. Added some automation in here to bring the solo in and out a little bit and bring the strings up a little bit. Also brought the guitar in a little bit heavier because, again, it's essentially just a repeat of what's happening at 8 before that additional chorus. So just to add some diversity in there. I also, as you may have seen on the second or third part of this, added a different falsetto lead part. The other thing I was noticing about the track overall is that falsetto part at times was feeling too loud and at times was not loud enough. I ended up just kind of bringing it down overall because, again, that's something that I don't want it to overtake the track. It's almost like an instrument in and of itself. But overall, you know, the core elements of the track stayed the same. I think the overall vocals I brought down, you know, after the listens in the various sound environments, and now it's sounding pretty solid in those environments and here. I've noticed so if you're watching this live or you're watching this on the replay, please let me know what you notice about the volume on your side. One of the things I noticed about using Streamlabs and this is that I've had to turn the track volume down substantially because whatever Twitch does to the audio makes it do some weird stuff sometimes. It has like a rebounding effect, like some weird stuff happens in the audio. So I want to make sure that the sound is okay. Like even if it's not as loud as I'm hearing it in my studio, which is fine, I don't want it to get weird feedback or distortion on Twitch. So super important, let me know. And then, all right, so that's basically where we are with this. You know, it's just showing off some of the final changes and talking about that. And so really at this point now, what I'm going to do is, you know, kind of spend the time that I would spend going through our Song of Week selections for this week. So I bring it up from time to time, but basically Song of Week is where I get the themes for doing these tracks and building these tracks that I'm doing here on Twitch. It's been a huge resource for me, so if you're watching this as another songwriter or musician, I highly recommend you check it out. It's tough to do. Actually, I'm coming back into this. You know, I mentioned on the first stream back that my Twitch account had been hacked, and so I wasn't able to stream for a while. And during that time, I chose to take 2 weeks off, which again, sticking to the discipline of doing a song a week will really change how you approach. It'll help you get things done. I'm a crazy perfectionist when it comes to doing this stuff. It's really difficult for me to complete things. And as you can see, you know, if you look overall at the time that I've spent writing this song here on stream, it took me, you know, 10 hours. And, I'll revisit these things from time to time, but really it's about getting the elements down, getting the vision of the track, making decisions, and then finishing, which I think that's the hardest part for me as a songwriter. I've gotten a lot better at it. So you're seeing this after, almost a year of doing Song a Week, of how quickly I can bang out an idea. And these are pretty complex ideas. Like, I'm not, guy that's singing and playing an acoustic guitar. So, really they're complex ideas, but you get forced to make decisions, and sometimes they're for the best, sometimes they're for the worst. But Song a Week, I highly recommend it. I'm a super active part of the community there, and I try to stick to that schedule of getting at least a new idea out the door every week. And again, I try to show that whole process here on Twitch. So again, if you like songwriting, you like composing, you like progressive rock, you like electronic music, you like 80s music, you like whatever you like, that's a big part of what I do here. And check out reddit.com/r/songaweek, which is where I'm going to be going through these tracks right here. So disclaimer always when I'm giving song feedback. So first of all, song feedback is opinion. I don't come from like I'm the most expert mastering, mixer, engineer, songwriter, any of those things. I also have my preferences for the type of music that I like and things that I like to listen to, some of which are, I tend to skew more towards retro styles and prog rock and some electronica and the darker edge of that. But one of the things I always try to do is give some sort, so basically my rule for feedback is this, and I would advise any of you who are giving feedback the same thing. I try to find one thing about each track that I like. Is it the composition that I like? Is it the production that I like? Do I like the person's voice? Do I like their choice of instruments? Do I like various things that I'm hearing throughout the track? So I'm always trying to find at least one positive thing, even if it's not a genre that I listen to. If it's not a genre that I like, a lot of times I won't stick out the whole song. So I know for some people that it might bother them, and if you're somebody here on stream and you're asking for feedback on a track or thoughts on a track, normally I'll listen to that whole track and I'll break down kind of what my thought process is and my approach is. But keep in mind, it's like working with any producer. I have my influences. I realize I'm a lot older than a lot of people that are on Twitch, so maybe I have more experience in listening to music, and it's why I started listening to music myself. So my influences are going to be different than a lot of people who are watching this. But, I always try to preface with, I'm not necessarily giving critique from I am the world's greatest mixer or expert. I'm just giving my opinion, and I'm always trying to find something nice to say. And I'm always giving any criticism I can through the objective eyes of I want to help. If there's something that I hear that I think might improve a track or something that, could make it punch better or something that could make it more interesting, that's the criticism that I'm going to give. So it's always constructive. It's never like, your track sucks and I don't ever want to listen to it and I hate this genre of music. It kind of sucks to do that. In fact, I'm just refreshing this to make sure that I am indeed the last person that submitted something, and I am. So if you want to listen, I haven't released this track on the music services yet. I will. I'm actually trying to be better about how I release stuff because I normally have just done, as I've written over the past 6 months, I've normally just shotgunned this stuff. So I've literally just finished it and released it like I would on SoundCloud. So when I finish a version, I tend to release that version on SoundCloud. I'm going to do what my good friend and person that I restream here on the stream does and probably release the version for that day on SoundCloud on a private link, and then I'll start up a Discord and start sharing those there. But I don't have enough viewers yet to start doing that. So once I do have more viewers, I'll start doing that same process that he does here to do that. But let's start going through and giving some feedback. And if you're in the chat and you want me to listen to something and give some feedback based off the rules that I just shared, you know what? I should really put together a quick Nightbot that talks about when I'm giving song feedback. That'd be a good idea. Let's log in and do that. How about that? Such a smart idea for what I'm doing here. While I'm doing that, we'll turn this on real quick. So this was my submission to Song a Week.
It was in the rain, his fear washed away, while hope and ambition seemed to flow. The tears of rage were wiped from his face, and destiny set on its course. In the face of such loss, it's easy to see why faith is now in short supply. The damning effect of a life we once led, return to the peace now of rest. Now grace or praise, purpose redefines the tragedy.
So you've already heard that if you've listened to any of the stream. I just want to turn that on. And so I like masterer. What do you call? I've always called somebody that does music mastering a mastering service or a mastering engineer. I just want to give it a title, so I'll be masterer. Also, I'm wondering if I should change my my Twitch screen. We'll call it Song Week, Song Feedback, because that was the end of that. Song Week and Music Feedback. Let's update our information. Look at that. I could probably do that in an easier way, and I should figure out how to do that. I also don't need Reaper open for this, which uses a bajillion resources. So I'm going to shut that down. Well, and let's listen to some tracks. So Director Snap is the first track we'll listen to. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a quick bio, and then I will be right back. So while I'm
The damning effects of the life we once led return to the peace now of rest. Be quiet, be still, be quiet, be still. The storm will pass. Peace to the land. Be quiet, be still, be quiet, be still. The storm will pass. Peace to the land. In the face of such loss, it's easy to see why faith is now in short supply. The damning effect of a life we once led return to the peace now of rest.
All right, I realized that for whatever reason, stop it SoundCloud. I realized I didn't have social links up here for some reason. So I'm gonna fix that. Here are social links. I should have it, yeah, because when I don't have this donation boxes up, which I'm not really asking for donations right now, I guess I should be. Give me stuff. I would actually just rather you listen to my stuff on Spotify. Follow me on all these things. Look for my stuff. The silence noise on services.